Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, here we go into the big finish fling of December. First of all, we've got a new class coming up Saturday, December 9th. It's called Smart Spend Down Solutions. The focus is Medicaid, how to manage it to your advantage, especially where long-term care is concerned. We've got a dream team put together of Colin Kastrick, the estate planning attorney with whom we partner, Michael Luna, the head of our insurance division, Smart Protection, and Kyle Schroeder, who's our resident authority on Medicare and Medicaid. We've already had, I think, 40 plus people sign up, so don't dally if you want to get in on this one. This one's going to start off with a bang, David.
Yeah, it is. And this is focused on Medicaid, so this is not Medicare. So Medicaid is either to help folks that just have no financial means whatsoever for healthcare at any age. But when we're talking about senior citizens aging out, eventually you may end up needing additional care, either home health care or assisted living facilities or full-blown nursing care or memory care. There's many versions that, and for you to get any assistance from the government, unfortunately, under the rules, Chip, you have to spend down. Basically, the federal government rules say $2,000. Now, each state has different rules. Basically, $4,000 is the most common limit. But you got to spend all your assets, including your IRAs, everything, down before you can get assistance. So what this class talks about is what are your options? Even if you're about to go in the home or your parents are already in a home, are there solutions you can put in and not have to use like the 5-year look-back rules and things like that to potentially save hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases?
New class, new time for us, Saturday, December 9th at 10 a.m., and it is right here at the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. Everyone's welcome, non-clients as well as clients, but you need to call to register, 402-369-7777. That's also the number for our next round of estate and tax planning classes. David, I'm going to move quickly here because Mike Schudel, financial advisor Mike Schudel, the main presenter of that class, is going to join us in the next segment. But that's Tuesday, December 12th or Thursday, December 14th, 6:30 p.m., right here in the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. And then another new one, David, on Wednesday, December 13th, Digital Asset Workshop. And next week, financial advisor Brad Starkin is going to join us on the show to talk about this. That's also 6:30 at the Midwest Learning Center. How about a quick thumbnail, David, of what that's all about?
So that will be about how cryptocurrencies and digital assets in general work. We're going to talk a little bit about the technology called blockchain that works behind it. We're going to talk about the viability of these assets. In fact, we've got a story we're going to cover here in just a minute on some of that information because of another unfortunate bad apple getting taken down in the crypto space, and why we want people to really tread cautiously there. Brad is actually certified. He has a digital asset certified financial planning designation, which is approved by the SEC and FINRA. It's the only designation covering this area. He's the resident authority for us here in-house on this. And so we created this class, not so you can invest in it necessarily, because we don't think that's a viable option for most retirees, but so you can understand it and understand where the market is going. And then if you are somebody that wanted to invest in it, understand that that should be purely speculative capital, a very small portion of someone's allocation if they were going to dabble there.
Digital Asset Workshop, Wednesday, December 13th, 6:30 p.m., right here in the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. And the number again, 402-369-7777 to register. Well, David, your take on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you kind of hinted at the team meeting that you think Black Friday is kind of over as a phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of stores just opened up at their normal hours at like 9 or 10 a.m. They didn't have the 5 a.m. rushes. We certainly didn't see really anybody opening on Thanksgiving Day or Thanksgiving evening, which was for a short period of time. That was even going. I'm just like, you're going to leave the dinner table with grandma so you can go get
crowding right into Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I guess and I understand if the deal is that good, maybe somebody needs to do it, but that's not enough to move me off the couch, so to speak, on Thanksgiving. But yeah, it seems to have calmed down now. And of course, the biggest thing is we've seen a major shift to online sales. So I will tell you from the data we've gathered, Black Friday was a record pure dollar amount, not record number of goods sold, but record number of dollars sold, and that is due to the inflationary issues we've had over the last 3 years. So everything costs retail about 26 to 27% more than it did prior to the pandemic and to COVID coming to our shores. So that has a lot to do with why it's a record dollar amount, but it was not record number of items being sold, right?
Okay, but so the lack of queues, the lack of lines outside the stores doesn't necessarily mean fewer transactions because so much of it is shifted online.
Correct. And so people, and of course, now we've turned Monday into the what's called Cyber Monday, right? So the Monday afterwards, and then followed by Giving Tuesday. Problem is, people get depleted by the time you get to the charitable part, right? The credit card's maxed or what have you on Monday afternoon. So people are getting accustomed to shopping online. Obviously, I mean, I went kicking and screaming into the world of like Amazon, but now there's a package showing at our front desk every single day at the office. I mean, these companies have evolved into be incredible conveniences in our lives, and so they make it easy to buy, and that's what Amazon's done, made it easy to shop. So is there room for competitors as the cyber sales go up in the future? I think so, which will be interesting to watch and play out, which could also tie into blockchain technology, something we'll talk about that digital class we were talking about earlier. But anyway, it was good sales numbers, but the fundamentals behind it, as I was saying, there wasn't more SKUs sold. There wasn't more items actually sold, right? Due to inflationary dollar amounts, it was record sales. But we have a downturn in the economy, and we're starting to see a lot of weakness and softness in the job market. So not, unfortunately, the greatest news when people are spending more than they should. And sometimes I talk about this, Chip, even when we know we're running out of juice, running out of cash, you're not going to maybe hold back from your child the last time you could afford to buy them a good Christmas. So you still put that money on the credit card, so to speak. And we've got record delinquencies there. We've got record interest rates there. And so, again, it's not boding well for the near-term future.
Well, you've mentioned this numerous times that the fundamentals, the underlying fundamentals are wobbly, but on the surface level, well, you just used a term recently that I've never heard before. You referred to a market melt up. And of course, my brain was expecting to hear market melt down. And I asked you, did you say market melt up? And you did. What does that mean?
So a market melt up is where the market kind of just drifts higher because there's no resistance to it. Technically, this happens almost every year by the year way, Chip. At the end of the year, a lot of the bigwigs that would potentially maybe bet against the market, short sellers, hedge funds, et cetera, they go on vacation. They go skiing in Vail. They go to the Hamptons or whatever they do, right? The jet setters of the world, the 1/10, the 1%ers that create a lot of the liquidity in markets and trade heavily through these hedge funds. Well, they take some time off. Therefore, there's no short selling. There's no pressure, and the markets just drift higher. We call it the market melt up because the market just kind of melts and oozes up higher about a third of a point a day on average for the last couple of weeks of the year. Fundamentally, we're seeing everything go the wrong way, Chip. So we're getting a separation of the technicals on the market, which say buy, 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 and the fundamentals say sell, sell, sell. And so how do you know what to do? Well, this is why you need to work with someone who can help you assess the amount of risk or volatility in your portfolio. If the fundamentals were to prove out and we were to go through a recession next year, which I humbly believe is going to be the case, or do the technicals win out and the markets just keep running to all-time highs? We have not had an all-time high. We're now 23 months since making a market high. That's a long stretch, right, to go through. And the longer we go without making it, the bigger the downturn may potentially be, at least when you look back from historical precedent. So again, and the economic data, I shared with you guys a story I found that 61% of American households, Chip, could not come up with $2,000 for an emergency today. 6 out of 10 American households couldn't cover an emergency bill for $2,000, yet we just saw record sales on stuff, right? That does not bode well for the fundamental understanding of financial literacy in our country, does it?
David, let's go global for a minute. You sent me a headline from CNBC, and I had to look at it twice because what? Am I reading the numbers correctly? Turkey's central bank hikes interest rate by 500 basis points to 40%, well above expectations. I mean, I was stunned because we go into a frenzy here over a quarter point increase, 500 basis points, 40%. Break this one down for us.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So the president there went the wrong direction. We actually covered this on the show, I think earlier in the year.
It has a familiar ring to it.
Or at some point last year, and I don't remember when we covered it, but he was lowering interest rates as the economy was fighting inflation. and he fueled extreme inflation. And he was trying to grow his way out by lowering interest rates, but that doesn't work, as we talked about. And so what he ended up creating is this hyperinflation. So to give you a comparison, right? When we talk about inflation, everybody knows prices cost more, right? But in real terms, it's relative. What will your currency buy, right? So we use the dollar here in the U.S., and that's the number one currency in the world for 68+% of all transactions in the globe, right? So we like to benchmark things against the dollar. Well, the lira, which is the currency used in Turkey, is down 35%, Chip, year to date in 2023. And so in 11 months, if you had $100,000 worth of purchasing power, you now only have $65,000 of purchasing power. Now, it gets worse. Over the last 5 years, it's down 80%. So 5 years ago, a $100 bill, if you had it in lira form, today it's only worth $20. So that is, and listen, folks, if we don't get our debt under control here, that's what's coming here in just a couple of years. And so it's scary times, and this is why you need to have someone understands what's going on so they can just tell it to you straight and position your portfolio so you can still take advantage when the market melts up and have some risk protection mechanisms in on the downside.
When the fiscal chickens come home to roost, as they are in Turkey and as they're going to here. All right, David, you mentioned that story about cryptocurrency. Binance, actually, it's a CNBC headline. Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao pleads guilty to federal charges, steps down. What do we need to know about this?
Well, we need to know that's now so we saw the biggest one fall down, FTX, right? Sam Bankman-Fried already went under. Now here's the next biggest exchange, or the biggest one of it left. Now it's getting taken down. And again, this is really important if you want to understand cryptocurrencies. Come to that class that Brad will be teaching on digital assets, because the whole idea of these digital crypto assets is that they're decentralized. You shouldn't have to have a central point like a central bank or what have you to go through, right? And yet everybody stores them on these exchanges, and these guys, they just can't help themselves. They just digitally go in there and take them out the back door, and fraud is committed. Now, what's interesting here is we had comments, and this was the Department of Justice and the Futures Association that went after him for the criminal charges. But conspicuous, absent here was the SEC. Once again, just, we act like we don't know, you know.
Why?
Yeah, and exactly. So how is it that they want to say this isn't a security, or say something, or clearly just give the market a message? They simply will not tell us if they want to regulate this as a security or not, which leaves a lot of confusion for financial planners and investors alike. And anyway, so just tread cautiously. And attend the class on digital assets with Brad here coming up on December 13th, I believe, right?
Well, yes, Wednesday night, December 13th, 6:30 p.m. right here in the Midwest Learning Center. Meanwhile, if some of this chaos and confusion, and like we said, the chickens coming home to roost in Turkey and what's going to happen here, don't let that keep you up at night. Get the complimentary report card, 402-369-7777. We'll check over your whole situation. Maybe you're in good shape. Maybe you need to make some changes. We have scenarios to address all manner of economic situations. We'll make recommendations on what you might want to do going forward, and there's no charge, there's no obligation for this complimentary report card, 402-369-7777. Up next, David Brooks is great, but it takes a team to do what we do at Retire Smart. We welcome back to our show a vital member of that team, financial advisor Mike Schudel, next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Our special guest this week is an experienced financial advisor who also is an attorney and a certified financial planner. He has taught finance classes at Creighton University, and he's getting ready to teach another round of our estate and tax planning classes. David, please introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Chip. Yeah, so we are once again thrilled to have one of our resident authorities when it comes to everything estate planning and tax planning and combining the two of those together. And that is one of our most experienced financial advisors. In fact, education-wise, you're probably the most experienced. You've got, 8 different sets of letters, I think, behind your name now?
I read good.
So this is, of course, Mike Schudel, who one of those sets of letters is JD. Mike did go to law school, but he realized that that wasn't his calling. He wanted to serve people in a different way, and he's flourished in a career as a financial advisor, and he leads one of our classes on estate and tax planning, which this year in 2023 was our single most popular class. And we've actually got some of those coming up, right? We have one more set this year.
We do. Just one more set this year, 2 meetings.
And when are those going to be?
That's going to be Tuesday, December 12th or Thursday, December 14th at 6:30 p.m.
All right. So if you have not had a chance to attend, but you've been listening, you wanted to, I would highly encourage you to get registered. We'll get the number out here in a few minutes, but they do fill up. And again, it's our most popular class. Sometimes it's standing room only. So please get registered if you'd like to attend. But so, Mike, in the class, you guys are, and you partner with Colin Kastrick, who actually was on the show here last week or the week before, I forget. But, you guys cover a lot of ground. The basics, wills, trust, why you need them, what you don't need, what you do need, depending on your asset level, time horizons, what you want. But I want to focus today on one of the most important areas people could have conversations around the holidays as we get into this year-end holiday time. A lot of conversations can be had with mom or dad around documents they may have already existed. In particular, I'm talking about a POA or a power of attorney, right? So first, explain to our audience what a power of attorney is.
Yes, a power of attorney is something that you can vest in somebody else of your choice so that they could step into your shoes in the event of a physical or a mental incapacity so that they can execute your wishes and desires, whether making decisions for your health care, if you're not able to on your own, or on your asset management, like, paying your mortgage, business transactions,
just paying your bills.
anything. Yeah, just making sure that you got a home to go to, that the lights are still on, that you haven't defaulted on anybody. These people can step into your shoes, cut those checks, and make sure that everything's taken care of while you're getting better.
And basically, you could have a power of attorney to give over the power to act on your behalf in a myriad of things. But the ones when it comes to estate planning, we focus primarily on two main areas: financial decisions, who exactly make sure the electric bill gets paid, your property taxes get paid if you're incapacitated, so you don't lose your home to a misstep or something. To just exactly, making sure the investments are doing what they're supposed to, all of these things, and then healthcare, critically important, right? And this is like who could make decisions on your behalf, whether you're on, a machine would be utilized or something to keep you alive. Do you want to stay on something like that? All these things are really important. But it's really important too is you don't have to choose the same family member or even an outside third party, a family friend, or you could have an attorney. You can choose different people for each of these actions, right?
I actually borrowed your story on that, David. You have clients where your particular client, she has 2 kids, a son with a background in accounting and a daughter with a background in nursing. She picked the son to be the power of attorney over her financial decisions because that's his bailiwick. And she appointed her daughter to have the medical power of attorney decisions so that if she's ever on life support or needs to have some medical decisions made when she's not able to, her daughter can do that. So pick the person most able to execute your will and your wishes in your absence.
And of course, you can put contingents behind that. So if the person you chose, or if it's in a child in this case, was not able to do it, you could have a backup. So for instance, my mom, we had to set this up for. Her husband had passed away, almost 2 years ago now. And so we had to set up financial power of attorney. And I am not the lead person on that. People are like, what? And it's actually my younger brother, Steve, who is an accountant. He's a CPA. Steve is the lead financial power of attorney. I am the backup. My sister, I believe, is the lead on the healthcare decisions, and my brother Lou and I are the backups there. So the reason my sister was chosen there is, one, she is the closest in proximity, so she can make decisions the best. She lives like 3 miles from my mom's current location, where the rest of us are in different states. So you can really just dial this in exactly on the needs of the person we're setting these power of attorneys up for. Now, one of the things Colin shared with us recently on the show is people set this up and think they're done. In other words, we put a power of attorney in place in 1983. We're good, right?
You might want to check all those relationships out, make sure it's up to date. That's why with these kind of things, we recommend, and we go over this in the class, that you should review them and probably have them addressed every 3 to 5 years minimum.
Yeah, because the power of attorney is your instructions, but when it comes to financial institutions in particular, they don't have to accept them. So if they believe they're too far dated, they may not accept the power of attorney, and then you may be in a stalemate, and you may have to have an attorney go to court and
Yeah.
get a court order to allow it to exist. And this is why it's so important and imperative that you want to have these reviewed every 3 to 5 years generally.
Yeah. Because suddenly we have a myriad of problems if things aren't accepted or the power of attorneys are not in place. We've got attorneys, court fees, and all the while we've got somebody that's probably sick, not able to take care of things, and life is trying to move forward with or without them. That can be extremely expensive and outrageously inconvenient.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things you will be covering at the class is we have a major, major change and shift coming in estate planning for many people. Anyone that's set up their estate plan in the last 10 years and has not had it recently looked at in the last 3 or 4 years, it's very imperative that you get someone to review your documents. And the reason is we have big changes on the horizon, Mike, on the estate taxes, correct?
That's exactly right. We're going down from a number of 12.92 million is what any American can give away at death and not trigger federal estate taxes. It's going down to $5 million in 2026. And that's still a big number. I acknowledge that. But in our listening audience, think about this. You've got your house, your life insurance, all of your properties, your 401ks, add all of that together.
And then we're talking about the death benefit on that life insurance,
yeah, the
right?
death benefit. Thank you for correcting that. And all of a sudden, it doesn't take too much longer. And the last layer I'll put on top of this is we do not think there's a lot of fidelity to that $5 million number. What do you mean, Mike? Well, I don't want to go too much off of feelings or we think this or that. But when our country is over $34 trillion in debt, printing off about...
Which we're going to hit actually next Thursday, by the way.
Yeah, unbelievable. So there's something to celebrate, I suppose. But nonetheless, they're going to be looking for ways to help pay some of that debt off. And this is such low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, the wealth transfer is the easiest tax to apply or impose,
I wouldn't
right?
be surprised to see it recede down to 3.5 million, or
Which is
even.
And 3.5 million is the current proposal from the current administration.
Yeah.
So that we do have those documents in house. We'll share those with you. And there are some in political circles that want to take that all the way down to $1 million.
$1 million.
And I got to remind people, it's like, listen, when I started in this business, it was $625,000. That's all you got to exempt, which seemed actually like, okay, that's still a decent amount because an average client then might have $200,000 saved for retirement. This is going back 2.5 decades ago, right? So inflation changes these numbers and they seem awfully big, but that $3 to $5 million hurdle is not that big a hurdle, especially if you happen to have some family farmland, which so many of our clients do in the mix. I mean, acreage is going up and up and up, and
almost exponentially.
So it's very common for us to have families that come in and they've got about $1 million to $1.5 million saved in what we would call traditional investment assets that we're having us help them plan on. But they have a 640-acre family farm that it's going to go to them and 2 siblings, and they don't realize that's an $8 to $10 million asset in today's world, let alone what it might be worth if their parents are around for another 10 or 15 years. And so mighty big problems that can be tackled, but they have to be done proactively because you can set aside a bunch of this. You can preserve, if you're a married couple, basically in next year, over $26 million could be set aside and protected from this estate tax, but that will go away in 24 months. So you very limited time. Highly encourage you, if this is something your parents, you have friends that own businesses, you might want to come to this class. Again, that's coming up here December 12th or 14th, Tuesday or Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. right here in the Midwest Learning Center. You would just call 402-369-7777 to attend. So, Mike, I want to talk about the kind of year-end planning when people are talking around the holidays. We've created a pretty cool little document that we want to offer out this week, complimentary to our listeners, called the Smart Document Checklist. Can you talk a little about that document?
Yeah, if we're going to be talking about, power of attorneys and wills and trusts and getting everything organized, having a wonderful document checklist. What if you forget something? What if, you thought you got everything, but it just fell outside of your memory? Having this checklist that we have created will give you an almost A to Z, soup to nuts checklist of the documents that you need to have at your fingertips or put somewhere safe.
We've had numerous clients tell us this has been an invaluable tool when, unfortunately, a loved one passed away, because it's just a quick inventory, if you will. It's just telling you where everything is located. Marriage license is in the safe in the basement, or passports are in the safe deposit box. The death certificates, where these would be from a predeceased spouse if you needed them, military records, pension records, all that. So you're lining out where everything is and who the professionals that you have assigned to help you. The attorney is so-and-so, Joe Smith at 123 Main Street. The financial advisor is Mike Schutel at Retire Smart. So you list all this out so your loved ones know who to contact. And then we ask our clients to let us digitally store that for them, so we have a copy. So when this happens, we can help the children go through, which can be a very stressful time. Again, this class is invaluable for those that are, want to think ahead about this and start pre-planning it.
Just a quick plug for that checklist, David. You've had that ever since I started over 4 years ago, and you've been evolving it every year. I remember vividly, and this is true, even with my law degree and everything, when I read it for the first time, I was like, this is thorough. I'm taking it home. I'm going to fill it out for myself.
Well, and
so you did a good job.
Yeah, I don't have time to go through it today, but I mean, I tell the story every once in a while on the show here, probably once a year. But the first year I got married, which was over 3 decades ago, my wife's brother passed away at a very young age of 33 years of age, her older brother. And I and another of the brother-in-laws went through the process. I've never done it since. And I never really want to do this again,
rough.
by the way.
Yeah.
It's not a fun time. And having to go find all his records. He was in the military, in the Army, so we had pension benefits. We had a death benefit. He had a job where we had to go find an old 401k. We had to go gather all this information and get his assets. And he lived in 3 states in the last 4 years of his life, so there was some trail stuff. So that's where this came about, and I've evolved this over my career. So we've tried to make it very simple, and would love to put that in your hands complimentary this week. But Mike, we are out of time for this segment, so I know you're going to have a great class this week. Thanks for taking time to stop in the studio.
Yeah, thanks, David.
All right, Mike. Mike. How about you, Chip? What do we got next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go. David, the first question is about politics. I saw a news story claiming there is overwhelming support for term limits and age limits for elected officials. As a financial advisor, do you think we would get better financial policies if we had term and age limits?
I'm going to go yes on both. And that's what most Americans, according to this article, believe as well. In fact, I found it really interesting that both Democrats and Republicans approved these measures at 81 and 80% respectively. That's
show me another issue on which you have 80% agreement across the aisle. I think the independents were right there at about high 70s or 80% too.
So let's talk about the age limits first, because that's kind of the one that's not been really thrown out there before. So right now we have the 2 leading candidates for president in an election, basically just under a year away, that will both be in their mid-80s by the time they would serve out this term if they were actually duly elected and served a full 4 years. Biden is, 82 right now, I believe, and so he'd be 86, 87 years old when he exited office. I'm sorry, I have to say no. And some people, oh, come on, you can't put an age on that. Warren Buffett's out there. Charlie Munger's sharp as can be at almost 100, right? Well, no, but you have to be at least 35 to become president. We have an age limit to get into the office because we should have a certain level of maturity. And let me tell you, 35 was quite old when that was enacted, right?
Yeah, when people were only living to 50 or 55.
Right. Because we want people to have a certain amount of wisdom, but we also should put parameters on the backside of that. So I think the president should be 35 years old to enter the office, should be a naturally born citizen. I still believe in that. And I think maybe we should cap that at, say, 70 or 75. And I'm sorry to our older folks that would think they'd want to run, but I just think, why not just make this a narrow window? And then, of course, so they don't serve lifelong. How many people in Congress are over 70, Chip? It's quite a few. I don't have the number with me, but it's well over a third of Congress is over 70 years of age. So they'd all have to go home, which they're not going to vote themselves in. And then the other thing that I think American public would absolutely go for is term limits. Now, I believe that there could be different term limits for different jobs. In other words, if you wanted to be a House of Representatives, that's only a 2-year term. But I think between that and the Senate, if you're going to serve in the congressional capacity, I think we should limit it to 12 years. in any combination. And then you may also run for president, which is already limited to 2 terms, right?
So that would be 2 terms in the Senate and 6 in the House.
Yeah.
12
So,
years.
so I think there's enough that you could do work, but I think you should go back home. I think you should have 0 pension. I think they should have 0 benefits. I mean, 0 benefits. They shouldn't have health care, nothing provided. That should be provided by the state who they represent, should take care of their expenses and those type of things. That should not be on the federal burden, because we have people in Congress that have staffs of over 30 and 40 people on your tax dollar. How is that fair? And it's done through seniority and all these other nonsensical things. But I think the American public would stand up for it. And not only that, when you work for the federal government, I'd like to see term limits on employees of the federal government. You know, there are certain things that should go into place.
Now you're raising a very interesting point, because that embedded bureaucracy,
Yeah.
you know, some of us refer to the deep
I'm
state.
sorry, you're here to
That's
serve
where
us,
the center of gravity is in
not
government.
the other. They shouldn't be career government employees. You
It
should go
happens at
serve.
state and local levels too.
And
Yeah.
you want to talk about solving the student debt crisis, Chip? Go serve for 10 or 12 years in the federal government, and we'll forgive a substantial portion of your student debt. And then you just go out and go to the private sector. You get great experience in a policy or an area, and then you go out and you can't work any longer, and no pension there either.
Well, now let me press you on that a little bit, though. So how, or run with that, I guess. How will these changes give us better fiscal policy, do you think?
Because you would not be there to serve your self-interest as a career politician, number one. Number two, you have to represent your constituents, or they, and of course, I think we should go back to senators should not be elected. Senators should be appointed by the state legislature. That's
That's
so
how
many
it was
people
originally in the Constitution.
So many
yeah.
people don't understand that. That's how we actually set this up. So we could pull them back if they're not doing what we want. Hey, sorry, you're not representing us. Come on home, buddy. And so we need to go back to the framework, which is still the best framework. It's by far from perfect, but our 3 bodies of government with the checks and balances was extremely well thought out by our forefathers, and the founding fathers did a pretty darn good job. And anyone that studies history, you can't refute this, right?
Are you suggesting, David Brooks, that elected officials who are not focused on the next reelection might have the courage to actually make fiscal decisions that the country needs, even though they might be unpopular?
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of then being party, we would really focus on the person, right, and the policy, because they're only going to be there for a short period. And of course, then folks could run. And I give my brother Lou, who's our chief compliance officer here, who's listening to as we speak right now. Lou ran for office, state legislature in the state Senate, I believe. I got to remember, but in Virginia, that's a couple decades ago. And I remember what he had to go through. And you've run for office multiple times and served in multiple capacity. The amount of money you have to raise today just to get on a school board. We even had our own Sean Swanson step up and run for school board recently, and he had to raise over $30,000, for a job that pays 0.
Right.
But we have term limits in our state legislature. We should have term limits in every governmental position, including the mayor of Omaha should have term limits as well. Like I said, Gene Stothard, our current mayor, served us really well, but I think two terms is plenty for any mayor.
David, on to housing and the economy. The federal government halted foreclosures on housing loans for veterans. I'm glad to see veterans get a break, but is that a signal that rough economic times are coming?
Why else would they do it? Right.
Okay.
So the simple answer there is yes. And so we're seeing this. And by the way, we've seen this across a multitude of Freddie and Fannie Mae mortgages. Those are the government agencies. They're not government departments, but they're agencies basically. And they had allowed for these mortgage abatements during COVID, and all those have stopped. And now we're starting to see foreclosures ramp up. And I expect you'll see that continue, because somebody's getting behind today. You can't refinance your way out of it when interest rates have more than doubled since you probably took out the original mortgage. So we're going to see some correcting in real estate. The damage has not fully been done yet there.
David, we've already blown through our Q&A time for this week, but if listeners want to call us, want to make a discovery call with one of our licensed advisors, how many this week?
We've got just 6 of those. We are getting into the nitty-gritty year-end planning, folks. So if you've got a pressing question that might be a tax matter or something else before the end of this year, take advantage of those. We'll schedule you 15 minutes with a fully licensed fiduciary-based advisor.
That's a tight window, 6 spaces, 402-369-7777. No charge, no obligation, 402-369-7777. Up next, there's trouble in the mezzanine. Unruly kids at the theater? No, it's a type of real estate loan, a mezzanine loan, and the Wall Street Journal says it's a herald of woe. We'll tell you about it next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. David, I ran across something in the Wall Street Journal. I had never heard of a mezzanine loan. Now, the headline in the journal is "The Clearest Sign Yet That Commercial Real Estate is in Trouble." It sounded kind of wild to me, some kind of off-the-books, high-risk real estate transaction. What is a mezzanine loan, and do you agree with the Wall Street Journal that it's a sign of trouble?
Yeah, so actually, my younger brother Steve, who's a CPA, who's actually worked for a development company, they do mezzanine financing all the time, and mezzanine financing is basically kind of off the books lending, right? So we call it mezzanine finance. Like if you've been at a hotel and there's the mezzanine level, you can't quite see what's up over that balcony over there. You can't quite see what's inside the package. And usually
this is legal?
Oh, absolutely. If somebody's willing to give you the mortgage, right? But what happens is they don't file the data like a traditional mortgage. So companies that track traditional mortgages like FHA mortgage, they can't find this data. So they have no idea if people are current or not. They don't have to report this, but they have it's a legal mortgage. They have the right to foreclose. And here's the thing with this mezzanine style financing. Now, this is not something your average person's going to have. This is typically for development. So somebody's going to be buying multiple properties or what have you. That's where this type of financing comes into play. But this grew in popularity. It's big business for big development companies. So like Blackstone, which is the largest owner. It's not BlackRock, that's Blackstone. They're the largest owner of real estate in America, in developed real estate, not land. Okay, and so they bought up thousands and millions of homes actually from the Great Recession 15 years ago all the way through the pandemic, et cetera, and rent those out. And they package these off and they sell them off to private equity companies in packages. And so they put mortgages on these in packages at a time. Well, here's the dirty little secret, Chip, and what the article is referring to is it's very quick and easy to foreclose on a mezzanine loan because you don't have to go through the same rigmarole that you would with a traditional mortgage. So it doesn't take 15 months, 9 months, et cetera, to go through the same legal process. These mortgages, if they think you're behind, they can close in 90 days on a foreclosure and take the property back really quickly.
And it's a surge in these types of foreclosures that has the journal saying, "Oh, a warning, alert."
Yes, so we've had a multitude of real estate built, office space, multifamily, and in some areas they overbuilt, in other areas is underbuilt. We're still way under the amount of housing units we need in America, and here in Nebraska, we're about 60,000 units light. So people are like, where are all these houses and apartments being built? Like if you've ever driven out west, I recently went to the movies out there at that new theater on 204-6 out the Exarban theaters out there, and the amount of housing and townhouses, I was just looking around. We drove to the theater with my son. I'm like, man, when did all this get here?
Oh, that used to be just plowed ground out there, but not anymore.
And where are the people coming from? Well, there's still a shortage and people need the units, but the problem is that when they overdevelop and people can't afford the rents they're being charged, some of these units, not necessarily here in Omaha, but all across the country, may get foreclosed on if they don't finish the build-out, finish the development. And there's certain areas like Phoenix, the greater Phoenix area, San Francisco, where this has happened, and you're seeing prices plummet. In fact, Chip, but a lot of people don't realize the price of new homes has dropped 17% this year. That's the largest I've tracked on record in 1 year, 17%. And new homes are now actually cheaper. This rarely happens than existing homes. In other words, when you buy a new home, you usually pay a slight premium. If you bought a 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a, Midwest neighborhood here in Omaha, right? You would expect to pay a little more for a brand new home versus an existing home, right? And that's the way the market usually makes sense. The new is a little shinier, brand new everything, so you usually pay a small premium. Right now, they're actually cheap. It's cheaper to buy a new home than existing homes, and that's usually the telltale sign of a downturn in real estate. The builders are now trying to offload the inventory. We talked about shadow inventory a couple times on the show in a few months back. Wait till you see what comes about in the spring. So they can't unload homes fast enough with these higher interest rates, and so they're having to discount the price, and the homes that are being sold or the builders that are stronger will be the ones that survive, right? Just like in retail right now, a little bit, and again, we're not making any recommendations. Do not buy or sell stocks based on when we talk about things on this show, please. But like Nike is in much higher or much better fiscal strength right now than most of their competitors, Adidas, Under Armour, et cetera, right? And they all have all this excess inventory. But Nike could just literally flood the market and drop their prices 30 or 40% and sell their inventory without making much of a profit, but they could stay in business, keep cash flow coming in, and move into and crush their competitors if we go through a deep recession, because all these guys have the supply chain whipsawed from one extreme to the other. There's oversupply everywhere. So just so you know, that might mean good deals on things like that. You know, you're buying from these type of outfitters if you're looking to buy them. But anyway, again, this is just another sign that the housing market is yet to crack, but is probably going to be cracking soon. And that's usually the last phase. Jobs and housing are the last two bits for a major recession take hold. We've already seen industrial drop, the service sector's dropping, materials is already in recession. We're seeing all kinds of issues, and wage inflation is taking its root, and we're seeing job cuts. We've talked about them in the UAW deal. So again, doesn't bode well for the future or the economy right now.
David, the next story, the next headline you sent me from, well, it's actually originated with the Epic Times and compliments of Zero Hedge. And as I was printing this out, our young employee, Carson, was there at the printer with me and was kind of like, he took a quick look at this. This is a 19-year-old young man. I have no idea what his politics might be, but he got annoyed as he kind of took a look at the story and scanned it. Is this what they're saying? Yeah, Carson, that's what they're saying. Here's the headline. Tiny fraction of global elites emit as much carbon as bottom 2/3 of humanity. It's talking about, Davos or someplace where all these folks were gathering, and it was another do as I say, not as I do exercise. Go ahead, David.
Well, yeah. So you have all the policy wonks, and these are from think tanks and governmental authorities and the super elite, the 1/10 of 1%ers of the world. They fly private jets to all these conferences. One person on a jet flying. These folks in just their everyday life, doing what they do, from travel to jets, cars, et cetera, what they own, they emit more greenhouse gases, et cetera, the 1% of the world, than the bottom 2/3 of humanity. So in other words, we've got approximately a little over 8 billion people on the planet, right? So you're talking about the top 1% of that. So that's about 800,000 people, right? Emit more carbons than the bottom 5 billion people.
Well, what jumped out at young Carson was, he said, look at this. It says it would take me 1,500 years to produce the same amount of carbon that these big shots do in 1 year. And he said that the thing that irks me is they're lecturing me and
right.
the rest
they're
of us
telling you
this.
that you can't use a straw or whatever, right? And again, I'm a pro environment person. I would love to have a great place to live, et cetera. But what nobody seems to talk about with all this data is that, again, we have more plant life on the planet than any time in known history. Why is that, Chip? Oh, wait a minute. What does that plants breathe in?
They like that CO2.
Oh, they like CO2. So when people used to complain about, the rainforest is going away. No, this is what gives them the CO2 to thrive, right? So, anyway, I don't want to get into climate talk really here, but I just thought this is interesting that those that lecture us are the biggest committer of the problem not by a small factor anyway.
All right, let's end on a happy note, on a Christmas season note, David. You alerted me to this. I wasn't aware of this. Down the road in Kansas City, apparently this has been going on for years. Here's a headline from CBS. After giving away $2 million, $100 at a time, how Secret Santa came to be. There's a Secret Santa. I think the baton has been passed to at least one or more of these Secret Santas. Tell the folks what's going on down there in Kansas City.
So this gentleman has been giving away money for I believe over 2 decades now, and basically he gives away typically about $100 at a time, and he just watches for people, whether they're in a diner, they're shopping. He'll just, I think you dropped this, and he just kind of, and then people are like, wait, what? And some people are like, no, I didn't drop it, and some people, thank you, and just take. He doesn't care. He's putting money in the hands of people that look like they need it. In other words, he kind of observes the situation and then drops some dollars in the hand. It could be a homeless person, it could be somebody in a diner, what have you. And, it's just an amazing thing. And they say it can be tracked all the way back to the Secret Santa actually can go back to 1971 when a homeless man had wandered into town and he was starving. The stranger stopped at a place called the Dixie Diner down in Kansas City and ordered the biggest breakfast on the menu. And his plan was to sneak out, before the bill came. He was going to dine and dash.
Dine and dash.
Right? Dine and dash for you college kids. Don't be doing that, right? And so the owner, a guy named Ted Horn, sensed what was about to happen. So he snuck up behind the guy and he stuck a $20 bill in his hand. I think he dropped this. That's what started it off, right?
Okay.
And so he didn't take away the guy's human dignity, right? He just, you knew what he was going to do, but hey, let me bless you. You need the meal anyway. And we talked about a great story last week where the jewelry owner store gave it down. So maybe we can try to make that a commitment, because I've been a lot of doom and gloom on the economy, finding one of these great stories every week. But listen, think about that as you go through this holiday season. Maybe bless somebody you're not normally blessing. Maybe stick $1 or $2 in one of those red kettles you see for the Salvation Army when you're walking into a store somewhere. My son was like, "Are you going to put more money in there?" So we put money on the way in and on the way out on a recent trip into a store. I was like, "Hey, son, it's a couple dollars to us. That doesn't really mean that's not life-changing, but that literally could be the difference." So, and my wife likes to bless folks in uniform. A lot of times we're in restaurants, we'll just blindly pick up the tab. So bless those that you can any way you can, and have an awesome and blessed this holiday season this year.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week. Financial advisor Mike Schudel has a Juris Doctorate law degree but is not licensed to practice law. Any statements and opinions are not legal advice.